Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Alex Gray is the CEO of American Global Strategies, one of the country's leading consultants on the global scene. Alex served as chief of staff to the National Security Council in the first term of President Trump, and he joins me now. Alex, let's begin, if we can, where I left off with Senator Cotton. How do you assess the American armada off of Venezuela, both coasts, I think, of Venezuela?
Well, Hugh, I think it's multifaceted. I think, on the one hand, the president has been saying since very early in his administration, actually during his transition, he's been saying that we're recentering our foreign policy on the Western Hemisphere. This is something I saw with him my whole time at the White House, where as someone who has a natural sense of place and location, given his background in real estate, he has been uniquely interested in our neighborhood, our near abroad, since his first term. And he's always been baffled that, one, China and Russia have intruded repeatedly into our hemisphere with almost no response from American presidents. And he's been shocked at the ability of narco traffickers like Maduro. And I say that intentionally, Hugh. He is a narco trafficker. He is inseparable from narco trafficking. His regime is a narco trafficking regime. Maduro's ability to bring narcotics into the United States and kill Americans has always baffled the president, in that there's never been a serious American response. So this is twofold. One is to do exactly what he's been doing directly with these strikes on the cigarette boats, which is to interdict drug traffickers that are coming into the United States to kill Americans. And the second is coercive, Teddy Roosevelt carry a big stick approach to try and change Maduro's behavior. And I think best case to compel Maduro to leave power and to make some sort of change in the regime's complicity in narco trafficking in the Caribbean that floods our streets.
So, Alex Gray, do you believe that the president would need authorization from Congress to launch kinetic activity directed at the Maduro regime? I do not, but I just want to see what you think.
Yeah, I don't think he does, Hugh. I think he fully is within his inherent powers as commander-in-chief to use force to prevent Americans from being killed by, as I said, a regime that is a narco-trafficking regime. I think the president is every bit within his full inherent commander-in-chief authorities to launch whatever strikes he deems necessary to prevent the Maduro regime from doing two things. One, collaborating with our adversaries, which he has been doing with Beijing and Moscow consistently, and two, to flood our streets with narcotics. I think the president's fully within his power to make whatever militarily appropriate actions he deems necessary in what I would consider self-defense.
Now, Alex Gray, can you walk me through sort of a degree of difficulty? When divers dive in the Olympics, the judges assign a degree of difficulty for the execution of what they're attempting to do. When we invaded Afghanistan, that was a degree of difficulty that was off the charts because we had no access to any base. We had the Marines deploying from ships thousands of miles away. It was very, very difficult to do. How difficult is Venezuela compared to Afghanistan if you want to accomplish the same sort of result that was accomplished in Panama by George H.W. Bush in the 1990-91 timeframe?
Yeah, well, Hugh, if we're to make a comparison to that era of American history, I would compare the Venezuelan military to Saddam Hussein's army in the first Gulf War. This is a military that's essentially Soviet, that's bloated, that on paper looks like it has a lot more capacity and capability than it really does. And I would refer you to a comment. I was giving remarks at the Atlantic Council last week alongside General Laura Richardson, who had been I guess, second to most recent commander of U.S. Southern Command. And General Richardson made the comment that essentially the Venezuelan military is operating with Soviet kit that hasn't been refurbished for decades, and it's primarily about the protection of the regime and Maduro himself, it's not a national army in the sense that we think of a national army that can do more than menace its neighbors, traffic narcotics, and protect the regime's leadership. So I think if we were to go in with a very narrowly targeted objective, which I think is what the president would do, this is not about democracy promotion. This is not about some sort of attempt to change the Venezuelans' way of life. The goal here will be to remove a narco kingpin like Noriega in 1989, and it would be to do so in a way that showed the Chinese and the Russians that they can no longer have a strategic foothold in our hemisphere, and they can no longer be complicit with a regime that's trying to kill Americans with narcotics. I think the president could do it strategically and surgically, and I think that the Venezuelan military the goal would not be to fight the United States. The goal would be to preserve the Maduro regime, both Maduro himself and the people directly around him. And I think that a Marine Expeditionary Unit with some special operations forces and air cover would probably be able to execute that with pretty short order.
Now, Alex, I like to remind people that even Grenada, which people don't remember and often mock, cost almost 24 American lives. Yeah. And the lives of a lot of people on the island. They're very dangerous no matter what you do. So we're talking about putting Americans into harm's way. Does it matter that Colombia is no longer our friend? Does it matter that Latin America that there's chaos in Mexico as we speak, which we also should talk about in 2 minutes? It seems like the hemisphere is kind of moving around in ways that were unpredictable and we do not like.
Yeah, well, the hemisphere is absolutely moving in unpredictable ways. I would argue, Hugh, that we're actually seeing some positive developments. We saw a right-of-center leader elected in Ecuador. I think we're going to see a right-of-center leader elected in Peru later next year. We're probably going to see
happened in Chile yesterday. Yep, Chile was good yesterday.
Absolutely. Brazil is unpredictable. Bolivia was a positive result recently. So I think we're seeing, Latin America is cyclical in how it changes in these elections. When Trump first came into office, it was primarily right of center. It has switched back and forth. I think we're headed in the right direction now. The Colombians could be a problem. I don't think they will be, because I think that they understand, again, that is not a good bet for even a Marxist guerrilla who is currently running the government of Colombia. That's not a good bet for them, and that's not a side they want to be on. I think the president has, again, you're right to caution, Hugh, that any of these actions have unintended consequences. We went into Iraq with far too few people in Washington thinking about what those unintended consequences could be. I think we've learned a lot of those lessons, and we're much more humble about the use of force as a country than we were 20 years ago. But I think if the president were to give the order that the military needs to go in and to execute a surgical operation, I think that from a technical perspective, I think the president would have a great chance of success in executing that order with relatively, and I emphasize relatively, with relatively contained damage.
Alex Gray, it's always good to talk to you. You always bring a lot of perspective to this, and I appreciate it. The CEO of American Global Strategies, one of the smartest people I know on matters of this, having served as Chief of Staff of the National Security Council when Ambassador Robert O'Brien was the NSC. Ambassador O'Brien, of course, Chairman of American Global Security. Stay tuned, America. I'll be right